One of the phenomena of modern times, of modern days, is the rate of divorce. I don't think that there is a family that there isn't someone there who is divorced. Sometimes in families, I know families that have 2 or 3 people divorced in terms of the kids of the family and so on and so forth. The question is, where is it coming from? Why all of a sudden, as we go further into time, the percentage of people divorcing is increasing? Of course, there are many social economic reasons for that, and maybe we could suggest that it's the collapse of the family structure in terms of how it used to be with grandparents and parents around. I mean, I understand a person fights with his wife, he goes home to his parents, they talk a little bit, they calm him down, he goes back home. Maybe. But it can't be all that. It can't be all that. I think that there's something much deeper than we want to acknowledge in terms of forming this problem, this issue. Question is, where do we find this kind of behavior for the first time in history? We'll get to that. Today, I would say that besides the person who is getting divorced, there are 3 people or 3 figures that are the contributors for that phenomenon. One will be mother, father, and who do you think is going to be the next one?
Son.
No, I said if the son is getting divorced, so let's give him that. There's 3 others besides the person getting divorced. So that mystery figure we're going to try to see in a second. In the secular world, people don't date the same way as they do in the frum world and the religious world. In the religious world, you go for X amount of times, and after, depends on which circles you are, but after a few dates, you kind of need to make up your mind. Yes, no. Now you move on. But in a secular world, and sometimes I hear it from Orthodox people as well, well, it's so much better that I wish I could date this person for a year or 2 years before I get married. And I keep saying, well, wait a minute, in the secular world, about 75% of the people are divorced, and they usually live with each other, X amount of years, and they're trying to figure things out, and they share an apartment. I'm not talking about dating. They're moving in together, a year, 2 years, 5 years, and if not more. And then something miraculously happens. They get married, and then a year after they get divorced. Today, kids come to the parents and say, Mom, Dad, we're getting divorced, goodbye. Nothing to talk about. What's going on? I mean, I hear the argument, maybe we should figure out if we're really matching each other, so let's date and live together for X amount of time. I'm not talking from a halachic point of view. And then we'll see if we match. But for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to solve the problem of divorce. So let's use that as an example and try to understand why other people divorce as well. What happened when you meet a girl? She's a nice, intelligent girl, easygoing, wonderful. You decide you fall in love, and you decide to move together, in a shared apartment, which I think is the most horrible idea. Even in the secular world, to move together is a bad idea. But why doesn't it solve the problem? The reason is very simple. You move in, and everything is good. Everything was perfect. You decided to get married. All of a sudden, together with that, come a realization of, oh my goodness, I need to assume responsibility. In other words, when you live together with someone, you basically have no commitment, no obligation, very symbolic things, but basically you're kind of free. Once you get married, the burden of responsibilities and accountability is so great that they snap out. And if they don't snap out, that's when the cheating starts. Because I need to feel the thrill of freedom where I can have some kind of a responsibility-free relationship where I can go in and live my fantasy and do whatever it is without being committed to a relationship, to committed to anything, without an accountability for anything. And that's why many people cheat on their spouses. I mean, otherwise it doesn't make sense when somebody who dated somebody for 5 years, then they're getting divorced. In divorce, in marriage, among the fruit world, there's the stages, almost like the stages of development, that the child has. So is in marriage life. It's a similar pattern. You develop into an individual. You have the 1 year crisis, the 5 year crisis, 5 to 7 years crisis. Then you have every 5 or whatever. I think you reach a certain point, and more or less it's like you're in it. You came to realization that but it's crazy. Why in married life, if you pass the hump of 5-7 years, it should be okay until 5 more years, and then yet when you live together, you're out. It's because there is no accountability or responsibility that you are welcoming to have. Most people don't want to be responsible for anything. Most people don't want to be accountable for anything. And whose fault is that? Well, first of all, it's mommy and daddy. If you hold your kids accountable for nothing, responsible of nothing, you are increasing the chances of your child to get divorced, or so they will be able to cheat on the spouses. Mommy is always, and you'll hear it all the time, in our culture, men don't do dishes. In our cultures, men don't do laundry. In our culture, what does it mean in our culture? What, you live in some kind of a caveman mentality? A mother should tell the son and the daughters, your job is this. To give him some job, give him some responsibility. The best thing you can give to your child is responsibility. You don't give your child responsibility, it's a recipe for disaster. And how's the father responsible for that? Well, he doesn't share an example. He never saw himself, listen, I'm a married man right now, this is my wife, I need to show my kids how to do it. You're going to say, I'm going to make sure my son doesn't become, go through the same experience. I'm going to teach him better how to be a man. That's not how you teach your son to be a man. So parents, with the lack of willingness to give accountability for the children, to give responsibility, to share responsibility with the children, are basically failing the kids. But then forget, we said there's another figure that is responsible for that. Well, then the problem is very, very deep. However, this is just to show you that I was right. The other mystery figure we're talking about is the relationship of Adam and Chava. How is that? Adam and Chava were in Gan Eden, everything was good, everything was fine, everything was terrific. They went through the honeymoon, they were doing lovey-dovey, everything is good. All of a sudden, Chava messed up a little bit. She let him eat from the apple. He said, okay, he ate from the apple. Nobody put a gun to his head. He ate it. What did he do at that moment when God said, hey, Adam, what have you done? He right away put the responsibility of his action to his wife and on God. It's for the woman in which you gave me that made me do those things. And then what did Adam do after that? He left his wife. They were separated. The idea of we're living separated goes all the way back in history. He's separated from his wife for 130 years. And what was he doing in this 130 years? Well, the Medrash tells us he was mating with Lilith, and he was making up demons What do you mean it was making demons? I will tell you demons. Demons are not demons with a little tail, with those little split hooves, holding a little. No. The demons are those ideas in your head that you feel unaccomplished. You know, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to be free again. Those demons inside of you, they made you not assume responsibility. Instead of saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Yes, she gave me the apple, but it was my mistake. I didn't eat it. I should not eat it. You see, Judaism, to counter that lack of responsibility in life, to counter the lack of accountability, Judaism had brought us and introduced us the concept of tshuva. Tshuva is usually being translated as a repentance. But repentance is not enough. Tshuva also in Hebrew means an answer. I have an answer for what it. Yes, mi culpa, my fault, I did it. And then when we say vidui, what we say? Chatati, aviti, pashati. I made this, me. And you hit yourself, me, I did it. So Judaism from the very beginning teaches you through the concept of charata, of taking responsibility, and the first chance in making, or the first step in making teshuvah is acknowledgement that I did something wrong. It's me. It's not my parents. Yes, I know they didn't know it, but it was ultimately me. When we go through this process, we go through the same concept of Adam and Chava, and then we let our demons inside of us. Oh, it was so much better when we were free. But do me a favor, if you cannot be accountable, if you can't account for your actions, if you are not able to assume responsibility for your wrongdoing, don't get married. And by all means, don't have kids. So if you take a closer look at the process of how Orthodox Jews actually introduced to marriage and so on and so forth, you'll see that it's a great blessing. And not like people are going out, oh, she's my girlfriend for 8 months. You know, and that's why I don't like long engagements when it's not necessary. Yes, yes, no, no. When I tell you yes, yes, no, no, date her 4 times, 5 times. If you don't know if that's the right person for you at that time, it's not. You should not be getting married. You should know, yes, it is, no, it isn't. If you're dating for so long, you're making the same mistake everybody else makes. And then you're going to regret it. So Rabbatai, start appreciating the Orthodox way of life, the Torah way of life of halacha. Listen to your Rabbanim, listen to the advice that they give you, and Be'ezrat Hashem, with Yirat Shamayim, you'll have a merry and happy life.